Pull up a chair. This isn't theory. We're building today. You didn't come for slides of fate. You came to see decisions made. From trigger to thought to action tied. An agent that works the queue all night. No scripts, duct tape to brittle flow. This thing can reason before it goes. Stateful steps, a memory core. It learns what happened just one step before. It's not just if this then that. It's what now, given where we're at. We give it context, give it intent, and watch the loop represent. Logic apps with an agent mind, reason, act, and realign. Yeah, attendees don't just watch, they build a torch, they strike the match. From ticket to resolution time, we loop the work and it works right. Agent loop, not a one-shot call. It plans, observes, and answers the ball. Every pass grounded in business rules. No road decisions, no cowboy tools. Service request stacking in the queue. The agent asks, what should I do? Reads the ticket, checks the state, calls the system, then evaluates. Act, observe, decide again. That's how agentic workflows win. We don't hard code every lane. We let the process self-explain. With guardrails firm but space to move. That's adaptive automation approved. Yeah, we're gonna loop the work with intent and context first. From logic apps to service flow. Every action earned, every status known. Yeah, by the end of this session time, you'll ship a loop that thinks in line. All the demo production time. We loop the work and close the night. This is where the theory lands. Hands on keyboard, aid in hand. Error pass handled, retreats baked. Observability, no blind mistakes. When it escalates, it knows the why. When it resolves, it logs the tie. Human in the loop when needed most. Autonomy where it earns the trust. Incidents rolling, priorities shared. The agent adapts, gives teams a lift. Reads the record, updates the case. No swivel chair, no copy paste. ServiceNow humming logic in sync. The agent pauses, stops to think. What's the best next step from here? And acts with clarity, not fear. We're gonna loop the work. Agentic power, business first. Plan, act, observe, repeat. That's how modern processes compete. Yeah, you'll leave knowing how to build an agent that runs it now. Not just automation inside that play. We loop the work the agent way. So when you walk out that door today, you don't just get a Agentic, you'll say, I built it, I ran it, I trust that flow. Because now you know how the loop should go.
Woohoo! It starts with a music firework today. My name is Marcel Bosch. I'm the co-founder and CEO from PowerBros, and we are back again with Kent Weare today with another workshop. Our topic today is agent loop in a day. Agentic process with logic apps. I think a really nice topic, and I'm really happy to have you here in our show. Kent, a warm welcome again.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Okay, you can start.
Sounds good.
Have fun.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. So we're going to be focusing on agentic business process in a day. A little bit about myself, if you're not familiar with me. So I've spent most of my career in integration and automation. Earlier on in my journey, I was a product manager on the Microsoft Flow team, and then I spent a couple years on the Power Platform customer advisory team, focusing on both RPA and Power Virtual Agent solutions. For the last 4 years or so, I've been on the Azure Logic Apps team, and so that'll be the focus of today's talk. And in addition to sort of what I'm going to show you here, you can look for resources on my YouTube channel. And then also I've introduced a new blog lately, just focused on a lot of agentic capabilities called the Agent Frontier. And feel free to go ahead and add me on LinkedIn. So let's go ahead, let's get started. So what the agenda looks like today is I'll do a brief introduction of Azure Logic Apps for those that may not be familiar with it. Then we're going to talk about this concept or this notion of deterministic execution versus agentic execution, which I think is pretty important when we think about why would we want to do some of the agentic business process automation itself, and sort of when deterministic makes sense, when agentic makes sense. I also just want to spend a little bit of time on how Logic Apps integrates with Microsoft Foundry and how we plug into the broader ecosystem. And then step 4 is that's where we'll get into the core content of the day. So the agentic business process in a day using our agent loop technology. And then last, I'll leave you all with some additional resources and a call to action. So we will take a break sort of partway through this particular workshop. I do encourage people to ask questions. I'll do my best to pause and address them as we move through the content. Now, the lab materials are available here. There's no cost, so feel free to go ahead and access that web page. And you're welcome to follow along as I go through this. There are some prerequisites that are required, which I'll talk about on the next slide, but you can go ahead and take care of those kind of as I'm working through some of the introductory content here. But I do want to make sure that this is available. This will be around after the event, so no rush in terms of getting it complete, but I wanted to share this with you all as well. Now, just in terms of lab prerequisites, so we're going to be using Logic Apps Standard, and Logic Apps Standard does require an Azure storage account to be provisioned. Technically, what you're going to see here today will also work with Logic Apps Consumption. Just the lab materials don't reference those steps. Hence, I'm suggesting using Standard just because that's that's what the content, the lab content is based on. But you can technically get this to work with Logic Apps Consumption as well. We're also going to need an OpenAI model. So this is something that you will have to deploy. We're not going to use a ton of tokens, but you will need to connect to OpenAI. And we also are going to go ahead and use ServiceNow. And we're going to leverage a developer instance, which is free. So once again, all of this information is available inside of the content, like in the Agent in a Day lab materials as well. So once again, you can go ahead and find all of this information. It'll tell you how to set it up, where to find it, etc. But for now, let's go ahead. Let's get started. All right. So Logic Apps Introduction. And if you were at my workshop the other day, some of this content's exactly the same. But Azure Logic Apps is a cloud-based integration and automation platform. It first launched in 2016, and it lives inside of Azure. We've got 3 different deployment models: consumption, standard, and hybrid. And we'll get into the differences on an upcoming slide. We do offer drag and drop Visual Designer, but we also have custom code extensibility. So this allows you to go ahead and build workflows in Azure Portal or VS Code. And we always like to say we're enterprise ready. We've got features that lend themselves to enterprise needs, including a single tenant offering. So Logic Apps Standard provides you with dedicated compute, dedicated storage, dedicated networking with built-in scalability in mind. And so that was a question that came up quite a bit with MCP. Oh, how do we scale this stuff? And this is, one of the benefits of leveraging our standard platform is that we offer auto scaling. So you can set the min number of instances that you want. You can set the max number of instances you want, and then you can allow it to actually go ahead and intelligently scale on demand as needed. Now, you'll pay for only what you need and what you're using. And just like we can scale out, we scale back in as well. So we're not going to overbill you either, and you have a bunch of instances laying around charging up money but not being utilized or providing value. So we expand and we compress as well. Now, much like a lot of different product teams inside of Microsoft, we've been adding agentic capabilities. It started back in 2024 with continued investments in 2025 and 2026. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about the SKUs. So we've got Logic Apps consumption. And if you're familiar with Cloud Flows, this is kind of the closest to that particular offering. And they share some heritage and they share some lineage. So there's going to be a lot of similarities there. And so this is a multi-tenant platform. So that means that it runs in the Microsoft Cloud. We take care of the underlying resources, compute, memory, etc. And we allocate and share that compute across multiple customers. Obviously, we've got security and guardrails in place to isolate workloads, but it is sharing some compute. We do offer 1,400 plus managed connectors. Those do run inside of Azure. Those are billed on a per execution basis. Now, what is one thing that's a little bit different than Cloud Flows, if you're familiar with that, is that these resources are deployed in a customer managed tenant. So you'll notice if you're in Power Automate and you've got a Cloud Flow and you try to find that in Azure, you're not going to find it because that is running in a Microsoft managed subscription. Versus when we think about Logic Apps consumption, you will deploy a resource in Azure. You will go ahead and see that resource inside of Azure as well. So a little bit more visibility and control. Now, Logic Apps Standard is generally what we recommend for most customers, just because it offers you some additional capabilities. So number one, it is that single tenant platform, and some of the benefits of that include the dedicated compute, storage, and network. We also allow you to use those same 1,400 managed connectors, but in addition to those connectors, we also have 15 built-in connectors. And these built-in connectors run in your dedicated compute. And the benefit for you is that you have more control. And as a result, we don't need to put in as many restrictions around throttling and stuff like that. So if you need high throughput, that's where you're going to want to go ahead and leverage Logic Apps Standard. We also support some additional security models. So we've got things like managed identity and being able to expose a private endpoint, connect to VNets without any sort of gateways. And as I mentioned before, we've got scalable compute, expand and contract as necessary. And then one other capability is, since it's your compute, we allow you to go ahead and author code, and this code will go ahead and run inside of your dedicated platform. And so the code is actually based on Azure functions. We call them local code functions, but uses the Azure Functions programming model. We actually run on top of Azure Functions from a platform perspective. So you're actually authoring Azure Functions, but without needing to go ahead and deploy them separately, secure them separately, and pay for them separately. It all goes in your Logic App deployment itself. Now, more recently, we did introduce Logic Apps Hybrid, which is based upon Logic Apps Standard, but it allows you to go ahead and run Logic Apps on customer managed infrastructure. And so this means you can go ahead and run this on premises, in a private cloud, even a third-party public cloud if you really want to. And we do offer this in a semi-connected mode. And what that means is that we have a connectivity bridge using Azure Arc that allows you to go ahead and see all of your resources and manage them from the Azure portal. So if you're familiar with Run History, you would still be able to go ahead and log into the Azure portal, see your Logic Apps, see your workflows, even edit your workflows, and then be able to view your run history, even if that Logic App is running on premises in your data center. Now, we've got some very strong scalability capabilities here as well, where we can go ahead and scale our containers, because this is all based upon containers in a Kubernetes cluster implementation using Kata. And this might be interesting for customers where you've got some specific industry use cases, perhaps manufacturing, perhaps healthcare, or perhaps you have some data sovereignty use cases as well. So that's a little bit about our SKUs. Here's a look at our designers, where we've got the Azure portal, where you can see a very familiar experience where you're dragging and dropping, searching for connectors and actions, and assembling on your canvas. And then we also offer VS Code, right, where it's actually the same designer, just hosted in VS Code. And you can see all of your files here, right? So here's our particular workflow, and we've got all of the adjacent files that make up that particular solution. So this allows you to go ahead, check it into source control, and then be able to plug this into your CI/CD process. So you can see we've got a deployment folder here. We will generate deployment scripts for you, and you can go ahead and then plug those into your DevOps pipelines so that you can go ahead and manage it like other applications inside of Azure. Quick look at those connectors, right? So we see the Azure managed connectors. This will look familiar to you if you've used Power Automate. A lot of the same connectors you'll find over there. And then here's the built-in. And maybe let's just kind of zoom in here a little bit. And these are typically going to be your high throughput connectors. So if we think about, Service Bus, PubSub, or we think about HTTP requests and responses, Cosmos DB, Confluent Kafka is something that's newer, Event Hubs, RabbitMQ, we've got IBM MQ, and File System, FTP. So you think about kind of the connectors where you typically need that throughput, those are usually a good match for a built-in connector, and you'll likely find them over here. And so once again, this is available in Logic Apps Standard and Hybrid. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about agentic capabilities, and this is where we're going to spend a lot of our time here today, is on a new component that we call Agent Loop, right? So here we've got a workflow, and we have an action called Agent Loop, and this allows you to provide some agentic processing capabilities. So this includes the ability to run these agentic processes as conversational or autonomous. We go ahead and we connect to a model, right? So this is where we're going to leverage all of the greatness inside of Foundry, where we can take advantage of different models that exist over there. Here we're just using GPT-4.1, but it could be GTP-5 and some of the newer models available. Then we're going to go provide our system instructions or our prompt. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is connect tools, right? So we can use our connectors and workflows, our code actions, even MCP servers, and we can assemble those as tools. And our agent loop will then go ahead and route our sort of requests and our processing to these tools in an attempt to achieve the objective that we go ahead and provide in our prompt itself. So that's what we're going to really spend a lot of our time on today. And let's just do a quick demo. I'm just going to demo at least partially what we're going to go ahead and build a little bit later, but just to kind of give you just a quick sort of rundown of what this actually looks like. All right, so I'm in the Azure portal, and let's just go ahead and do a refresh here. All right, so here's our designer, and this is a conversational workflow that we've gone ahead and configured. And here we've got basically the trigger, and then we've got that agent that I talked about before and our instructions for that agent. Then we've got the various tools. So in our use case, and I'll show another diagram of this later, we're going to focus on an IT service management solution. And here we've got child flows that we can go ahead and call. And we'll go ahead and we'll create what's called agent parameters, which are essentially hints provided to the model on what are the inputs that need to be provided in order to call that tool. And so this becomes a very strong paradigm where if the agent isn't sure where to go ahead and get assignment group, and we're talking about a conversational workflow here, it's going to then go prompt the user for it. So what this just leads to is a lot of reliability, and when you're executing your solutions, it actually works out quite well from that perspective. And so that's going to be really important. As we can see here, we've got a lot of different sort of options here. We can call workflows. We can call an email and send an email. We can go ahead and connect to blob storage. We can then go ahead and parse that particular document. So when we get to the conversation of deterministic versus agentic, this is where those concepts kind of converge, right? Where we've got agentic processing happening here, but then here's an example of some deterministic steps. And we can naturally go ahead and add more as we see fit, but that's where these sort of converge and actually provide a lot of value. Now, if we want to go ahead and call this, you can see here we've got a chat link. And when we go ahead and click into that link, we'll head over to this particular experience. So this is a secure experience. So I'm logged in. It knows who I am because I'm already logged in. And we can go ahead and start talking with this. So here I can go ahead and just say my database is offline. And the agent is going to go ahead and respond. And then it's going to ask me some additional questions. Okay, like what is the error message you're seeing? What is the team or the assignment group that it should be assigned to? Now, the reason why it's asking me that is because when we create a ServiceNow incident, we've got some inputs. It's looking for an assignment group. It's looking for like a description of what's going on. And, it also needs a severity and some resolution steps. Now, we don't necessarily have to provide all of that because the agent has other tools and the ability to look up an operational runbook to get more insights as well. So here we're just going to say that, the error is database is unavailable and assigned to the database team. And so it's also going to take advantage of other tools in order to sort of fill in those other blanks, if you will. And so here what's going to say is it's kind of looked up the knowledge base, and we'll talk about more of that later. And, it's provided us some additional information, and it's asking me if I want to go ahead and log it. And so, yes, please log. And now it should go ahead and call that tool, and basically we should get a ticket number back, which we did, right? And so it went ahead and figured out what was the severity based upon additional knowledge. And then, it got additional information about resolution steps and the estimated time to resolution. And then also it went ahead and created that ticket inside of ServiceNow. So we'll leave that as is because we're going to go much deeper a little bit later, but that's just kind of a little bit of a sneak peek in terms of what we're going to build here today. All right, so back to the slides. Now, we've got some other agentic capabilities as well beyond what I just showed you with the agent loop. Something that's actually pretty cool is the Python code interpreter. So this is a situation where you can go ahead and provide sample data set, provide a prompt, and what'll happen is that we will generate Python code for you on demand that will then get executed. So you don't even need to know Python. You just need to be able to explain what you would like to be done or accomplished, and we will go write that code for you on the fly and execute that for you and return the result back so it can be used in other steps in your process. So you can kind of think of this as having a tool that will execute your Python code. We also have support for RAG, right? So we've got connectors for the Azure AI search solution. And what we can go ahead and do is create ingestion pipelines where maybe we've got documents or other transactional or business data. Go ahead and index that and then make that available to retrieve as a tool as well. We've got AI operations. We see this in the lab. For example, we're going to go ahead and grab a Word document from blob storage. Word documents naturally have lots of markup, lots of kind of binary sort of markup, and we want to go ahead and just extract the core text because our model isn't concerned with all of that other stuff. We don't want to unnecessarily burn tokens either. So we can go ahead and do operations like parse. And then when we talk about the ingestion side, we also have the ability to go ahead and do some chunking as well. We do have a document intelligence connector. So that's like if I want to scrape a PDF, you can go ahead and do that. We've got Microsoft Foundry integrations, which we're going to talk about here shortly. And then the workshop I did earlier in the week, which is available on demand, is MCP servers, where we can go ahead, leverage all of these connectors and expose them as an MCP server that can be called from your Foundry agent or your Copilot Studio agent or any agent that supports MCP servers. So lots going on there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about deterministic versus agentic processing. So sometimes, we get caught up in this whole kind of situation where it's like, oh, this is the new thing. The new thing is always the best. It's always better than the old thing. And we're not really there. I don't think from an industry perspective, and certainly from a Logic Apps perspective, we're not trying to send that message. We truly understand by being involved in business process automation and integration that you have deterministic execution for good reasons, right? You've got, rules-based, execution. You want it to be predictable. You want it to be consistent. And that's really what you do is you kind of build these different pathways. You then go ahead and test those specific pathways. And then the idea is when you get that request coming in, it goes down one of these pathways that you've tested, and you can expect a good outcome when it comes to it completing successfully. Now, that's fine. That's great. And I think there's still a need for that, especially at scale when we think about processing thousands of transactions per second or minute or whatever. But I think the challenge has always been, there's always been these edge case use cases where it's like, oh, that requires a judgment call, or that's really complex to go ahead and codify and have all of these different pathways that you need to go code for. And that's where agentic comes in, where it can be contextually aware and adaptive. And it can actually take advantage of dynamic branching from real-time data as well. So there might be data that comes in that you didn't necessarily think about, but can actually be sort of handled or addressed by using agentic capabilities. And this is really where we find the value here, at least in the current time frame from an industry perspective, of having these things working together is what drives a lot of value for customers. I think customers are not quite there to say everything belongs in an agent, but there's probably pieces of it that lend itself quite well. And that's where Logic Apps, we've kind of taken this stance of marrying up these two concepts together, allowing you to have deterministic steps, then agentic steps, then deterministic steps. We find it provides kind of that right level of balance. And you can choose here, right? You have full control over what needs to be agentic and what needs to be deterministic. So just a couple examples here. If we think about employee onboarding, previously HR might manually send documents, schedules, training, and has to answer a bunch of repetitive questions. Instead, we now can leverage AI to summarize policies, suggest personalized training for employees, and an agent can go ahead and answer these new hire questions dynamically and can adapt by role or region, right? Instead of being very sort of static and having to be updated and maintained all the time. If we think about insurance claim processing, adjusters manually review documents, perform risk assessments, follow static approval steps. Where AI can accelerate the risk scoring, agents extract insights from unstructured documents, workflows adapt to expectations and fraud flags. And so I always kind of like to look at this as leverage AI for the things it's really good at, and then leverage your deterministic steps where you really need that, because that predictability is table stakes for you as well. But like I said, I think this is the opportunity is to kind of blend those two concepts together to solve the problem. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Microsoft Foundry integration, because I think this is really important. We oftentimes get asked, okay, how does all of this fit into the broader ecosystem? And it's really important for customers to know that you're not kind of building in isolation here, and that there is a lot of integration with Foundry as well. So if you're not familiar with Microsoft Foundry, it is a strategic AI platform for Microsoft. It does provide developers with a one-stop shop for building and managing agents. And Logic Apps participates in the broader Foundry ecosystem in the following ways. So we do allow you, at least for now, in the autonomous side, and this will get added to the conversation, is that we allow you to connect to a Foundry project. And that just allows you to leverage assets that have been deployed into that project, like models. So that is something that shows up there. And when you select that, traces also show up there too, so that you can actually see all of your Logic App executions that landing in that same Foundry project. Obviously, models are huge. We certainly don't want to reinvent that wheel. Foundry has such a large library. I know around Ignite, it was around 12,000 models. I'm sure that number is even much larger now. Feels like every week there's new updates to models, and Foundry does an awesome job of keeping those up to date and introducing the latest models as they become available. And so that's something that we're highly dependent upon. As I showed in the workshop earlier this week, MCP servers. So we've done some integration with Foundry. When you're in the tool catalog, you can go ahead and dynamically build a Logic Apps MCP server using our connectors, and we can go ahead and make those available for your agents inside of Foundry itself, which is pretty awesome. We also, and we're going to see a demo of this here shortly, of the Foundry Agent Service Connector. And this kind of, once again, speaks to those strengths of kind of deterministic steps with agentic steps. Like maybe you do have an agent inside of Foundry, but you want to take advantage of existing deterministic steps in Logic Apps, right? Whether it's triggers or other actions, other sort of custom code, and you have an agent that you want to embed in this as well. That's one of the opportunities, and we're going to see a demo of that. And then Foundry Control Plane is super important as well. This was announced at Ignite. And what's interesting about Foundry Control Plane is that it's a way to go ahead and unify your agents in the enterprise, right? So I think that's a concern a lot of organizations have these days, is like, hey, people are building agents, we're getting value, that's cool. But how do we govern them? How do we go ahead and sort of, inventory them and catalog them and, have some oversight from a cost perspective, from an errors perspective, from an ownership perspective? And Foundry Control Plane is actually a way to go ahead and do that. And it's one of those things when we go ahead and create our agentic solutions and Logic Apps, they automatically show up in the Foundry Control Plane. So I'm going to show you that here as well. All right, so here is the Foundry Tools catalog. And so I'm not going to show a live demo of this just because I spent a few hours the other day in our workshop on this, but you can look for that online or on my YouTube channel. And here what we have is the tools, right? So I'm in Foundry and I've logged into a particular project and I want to go ahead and connect a tool. And so I can click on this connect a tool button. I can then go ahead and search for a particular connector. In this case, it's going to be Salesforce. I can then wire up some configuration, right? So these would be the connector actions that we're going to turn into a Logic Apps workflow that becomes an MCP tool. And then what happens is we go ahead and dynamically provision a workflow. We wire it all up to this particular action. We take it into consideration any parameters or inputs that you need. And that's available then for Foundry to go ahead and call. And it's a great experience. And in addition to the Logic Apps connectors, Foundry also provides some of their own sort of built-in MCP servers and also includes third-party MCP servers as well. So it really is this broader ecosystem that Logic Apps is participating in. Now, the Foundry Agent Service Connector, this is something that I will show you a demo of. And here you can see we've got these deterministic steps, and then we want to go ahead and call into a Foundry agent. And so this, allows you to go ahead and build your agent in Foundry. Maybe it's a codeful agent. It could be a workflow agent over there as well. And you want to still leverage Logic Apps because it's orchestrating your broader business process. And so this is going to allow you to connect to your Foundry agent. you can go ahead and pass it data, kind of like a prompt, almost like a user prompt. The agent will go ahead and execute, and then it'll provide a response back. And then from that response, you can kind of choose what you need to do next. Maybe you've got some subsequent steps you need to go ahead and fulfill. Maybe you need to make another agent call. You've got full control over how you go ahead and orchestrate that. And so the example is, if we take, perhaps we look at a prior attempt to solve this problem, where maybe we're dealing with a product return scenario. And we've got a call center that's using ServiceNow, and ServiceNow is going to go ahead and they'll log a request manually. And then someone from customer support needs to go ahead and look into this in order to try to help the customer itself. And so we end up in the situation where maybe we've got a workflow that is subscribing to ServiceNow tickets. And then through a Microsoft Teams connector, we'll go ahead and notify customer support that there's a new ticket that needs to be looked at. The customer support agent will then go ahead and do a bunch of manual work, and then we'll go ahead and email the customer with some sort of resolution. If we think about what this looks like in an agentic world, we would still have the trigger from ServiceNow, but instead of handing it off to a manual person or manually hand it off to a person, we're going to actually go ahead and call into the retention agent on the Microsoft Foundry side. It will then go ahead and look at other data sets in order to make a decision about how we should help this customer, and then email that customer with some sort of resolution. And so what's really interesting when we think about replacing manual work with agentic processes, it's always interesting to think about how would this customer support person, make that decision to help the customer. I'd be willing to bet they've got some sort of policy document where it's like outlines all of the kind of the steps that you should follow, the considerations, the business rules that you should take into account. Now, if you have this document, if you have this business process, well, that's knowledge that you can actually embed in an agent. And you can actually take advantage of an agent to do that processing that would follow that same line of thinking that the human would go ahead and do. And so this kind of ties nicely into what we're going to build with the ITSM solution. But that's just what I want people to think about, why knowledge is actually so important. So let's just jump into a brief demo here, and we'll see this in action. All right, so here is our workflow. Now, what we've got here is a request response. And so I've got an HTTP trigger that's exposed. Now, I'm just acknowledging back, because this is going to be one of those things where we accept the request, and then we asynchronously go do a bunch of processing. So as part of our inputs, we're going to go ahead and grab information from our headers. And so the one thing we want to go ahead and do is get details about, where did this ticket come from? So we'll go ahead and get the assignment group. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and get the customer based upon the caller ID. So you can kind of think of this as an event. Then we need to go look up the details in ServiceNow for that particular event. Here, what I'm just going to go ahead and do is kind of aggregate all of this information, and we will then go ahead and pass that to an agent. Now, I do have an HTTP call here that is just going to go ahead and sort of start a conversation with that agent by calling an API. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is pass our information from this particular compose action into the agent itself. We're going to get a response. I'm just going to go ahead and do some parsing, and then we'll go ahead and send an email out to that particular customer. Now, the use case is really just around, like I said, product return scenario. And let's just close this and just take a look at the call. Now, instead of logging into ServiceNow and executing this, I'm just going to use a REST client to go do this. But we've got a customer that wants to return an order because they say it's defective. And we can see all of this additional information. So we'll go ahead and we will click on this button. We've got the response coming back. And we will basically, this is now running asynchronously in the background. If we head over to our run history, we should actually see this in flight. Okay, it looks like it's already finished, which is cool. And we'll be able to see step by step exactly what happened, what took place within that particular call. So we'll just let this load. Now, maybe while we're just waiting for that, let's go ahead and I should have an email. Why is this not? Where's this? Oh, sorry, it's on my other screen here. But here's the email that was sent back to the customer. So we've noticed you haven't used our service in a while. We value your presence. We'd love to have you back. Here's a special offer for you, 20% off your next purchase. Use this welcome code at checkout. And so this was something that was determined from our agent itself, right? So we got our inbound request. We acknowledged it. We went and connected to ServiceNow. We got additional information, additional details. We then went ahead and started that conversation. Let's take a look now at the agent here, right? So this was the input that was passed into our agent. And then what we'll be able to go ahead and see is the response. So this is what the response from the agent, right? It sort of matches up what we see in that email. Here, I just did some parsing, some cleanup here in order to go ahead and send an email that is a little cleaner than what we previously had going on there as well. So that is the execution. Now, from a Foundry perspective, what does this look like? So if we go over to Foundry, and I'm in a project, I'm in a Foundry project, and then here's all of the different agents that exist in this project. Now, we went ahead and called this one the customer retention agent. And here we can see, we'll just flip, we were running against version 4. Foundry supports multiple versions. So we can see that it's actually running, and it's a hosted, this is a codeful agent. And it's got one replica. So it's kind of, it's running in containers. And if we head over to traces, we will actually see that this was the trace that just ran. So once again, we can go ahead, based on this conversation ID, we can go ahead and see what was passed into our agent and what was responded back as well, right? So we get all of that telemetry, that goodness inside of Foundry as well. So that's really important. And so that's just an example of how we can use the Foundry Agent Service Connector. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Foundry control plane. So I kind of introduced this earlier on a slide, but really what this offers you is that end-to-end observability, see how agents perform, see how they're running. You can define different agent controls, right? So behavior rules, controls for agent inputs and outputs. You can review security, ensure that these agents are using the right authentication mechanisms, and you can really manage your fleet. So see which agents are healthy, which are unhealthy, and then be able to deep link into the actual source as well. And so this is one of those things where you can connect agents. They don't have to be Foundry agents. They don't have to be Logic App processes. They also can be Copilot Studio or even third party, where you can go ahead and register third-party agents as well. So let's just take a look at a Logic App example of this. So the other day, the other day, I have to think, I showed a demo of a wealth management execution, right? So we have a wealth manager use case where they go ahead and leverage an agent to help with their customers in terms of preparing for different meetings. And this one's a little bit involved, right? So we've got a lot of different tools that take place, and we check calendars, and we book meetings, and we search the web for news for a particular equity. We create documents, we get meeting transcripts, we connect to Salesforce. There's a lot going on here. And so what happens is when I actually go ahead and save this, it automatically gets registered inside of Foundry. And so what happens, I'm now in Foundry, and I'm over in the Operate tab, and then I click on Assets, and I can see the different agents that belong to this subscription. I can even go ahead and filter them by source, like is it a Foundry agent, an SRE agent, a Logic Apps, and I can go ahead and see what's going on here. Now, this is work in progress, so I do want to caution that there's still some gaps in terms of data that we need to go ahead and populate. But in the interim, there's some things that you can go and do. One is discover it. Two, you can go ahead and do like command and control, where if I wanted to stop this or start this, if I want to go ahead and view the source, I could go ahead and click on this. That'll take me right to the Logic App page itself. And we can also go ahead and see those traces. And so here what's happening is that we are using the sort of a unified schema in Application Insights that is going to go ahead and emit data that follows the convention that is needed for Foundry control plane here. And so here we can go ahead and see the individual traces and go ahead and click into it and see exactly what is going on. So once again, even though like this is running in the Logic Apps runtime on the back end, we can go ahead and access this information inside of the Foundry control plane. So that becomes pretty important as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's move forward. So let's now get more into the core focus of the day. I believe someone in chat was looking for this as well, but this is the content that I'm going to be following here. And as mentioned before, this is there's no cost for this content. Obviously, it's going to use some Azure resources, so keep that in mind. But this is going to be the sort of step-by-step that we'll follow here. Now, we're going to go ahead and do a bit of an abbreviated version of this. Like I'm not going to go through setting up everything from scratch, and but this will give you a good sense of what is possible here. Now, before we jump too much into it, here's the use case itself. So it's going to be an IT support agent where conversationally we'll be able to handle different requests. And what we're going to build is the agent itself. We're going to leverage knowledge or a run book, much like I mentioned before, that notion of like, hey, I've got a policy. How do I go ahead and use that as part of my business process? Then we're going to go ahead and build tools. Now, in this case, these tools, or I guess these first three, are going to be deterministic workflows. And they're going to go ahead and connect to ServiceNow and do what they need to go ahead and do for creating a ticket, updating a ticket, closing a ticket. And then there's kind of a bonus activity of like, hey, let's go ahead and create a tool that will send an email so that we can inform stakeholders as well. So that's what we're going to go ahead and build. If it's something that you've used Power Automate or Logic Apps before, this is stuff you'll breeze through. If you're new to those technologies, definitely approachable and definitely something that you can go ahead and achieve. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about just knowledge as a tool. And, I just want people to not underestimate the power that your internal process documents have. We oftentimes think about agentic processing as being able to act as a human would. And in order to do that, you need the institutional knowledge that's available in your organization. And so this is an example of a run book. Like you can imagine, or a wiki, a knowledge base. You would imagine that probably every IT organization has this. If not, they probably should. But it's one of those things where it's like, hey, for a specific error, what do I go ahead and do? What are the steps that I go ahead to resolve it? And it's one of those things, if you can go ahead and construct that, that becomes hugely valuable for an agent to be able to go ahead and use. And it's one of those things, I'm going to use a tool that's going to call and retrieve this from blob storage. For this particular lab, I think that's fine. At scale, when you've got many documents or documents that are actively changing, that might be a better scenario for using a RAG solution where you ingest this into a vector store and then you retrieve it. That's totally cool. It's a little bit more than we need for this lab, but the bottom point, or the main point here, is leverage knowledge because it adds tremendous value to your agentic business processes. And it'll also allow your agent to align with existing processes and expectations as well. So I just want to briefly show this document. It's nothing too crazy, but this is what the agent is going to go ahead and rely upon, right? So we're just talking about what is our general process. We're saying ServiceNow is our ITSM solution. Each issue needs to be logged in ServiceNow. You create a ServiceNow ticket once an incident has been raised. Update the ServiceNow ticket as the incident is being worked on. Do not close the ticket without it first being updated. Close the ServiceNow ticket once the issue's been resolved. Send a summary of the issue and status via email to stakeholders. That seems pretty reasonable. And that's probably instructions you would typically give a service desk. And it's probably more than that, but hey, this is just a demo. And then we could see, like, what is the list of issues? Okay, so how do I get access to a database? Well, that we would say is a severity 2, typically. There's a estimated time to resolution of 4 hours, and these would be the recommended steps. And then it's like, oh, hey, can you do a backup? And so forth, right? So these are going to help frame, our agent. And when we log tickets and we ask for these resolution steps, that's what's going to be retrieved and included when we actually log the ticket as well, so that the person that picks it up already has some idea on where they may want to start as well. So this is something that we include and is quite important in my mind. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's just see. Okay, yeah, we're now ready to go ahead and jump into what we're going to go ahead and do here. Let's go here. And I'm going to, it's going to be flipping back and forth a little bit here. So sort of bear with me as we kind of go through this. I guess I can start here. So this is the lab itself, right? So we've got introduction, creating a resource group, enabling your OpenAI model, setting up your ServiceNow sandbox, provisioning your logic app, setting up your knowledge base. So here I can just kind of briefly show how we go ahead and do that. So we've got, as part of the package, you will be able to go ahead and download that Word document that I did show. We are going to go ahead and create a storage account. We're going to go ahead and create a container inside of that storage account. We're then simply just going to go ahead and upload that Word document into this particular blob storage container itself, right? So that's how we're going to go ahead and take care of that. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is build our agentic workflow, right? So we will go in to our logic app. And so I already have a logic app here. And so in the lab, it's going to describe how you go ahead and provision the actual logic app itself. But here I'm going to go ahead and just reuse this one just for the sake of time. And so we're going to go in and click on create, and we'll just click on create here. And in this case, it will be conversational, and we need to provide a name. So I'm just going to call mine workshop, and then demo conversational agent. Okay, so that's been created for us. Now, what we've got is kind of the initial sort of scaffolding of what this looks like. So we've got our trigger, and so this is going to be A to A trigger. I'm not going to click on this. It does expose a secret and a URL, but that's where you'll see that information. A to A is particularly important because it is like a standard, an open standard, and really this does enable a lot of the agent-to-agent communication or even multi-agent scenarios. So you could go ahead and have another agent platform actually call your agent over that protocol. We decided to also include that as part of our chat, and basically have built a client around it, just giving it that sort of a lot of flexibility. Whether it's conversational or agent to agent, you can go ahead and leverage that protocol. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and create a connection. Now, just want to just show what this keeps wanting to go ahead and do this. So what this is going to ask you to do is go ahead and connect, select a specific model, and then go ahead and connect to an Azure OpenAI instance. So that was done previously in our setup. It's called out in the doc where you go provision your OpenAI model. And here you're going to be able to browse and select it. Now, for our particular use case, we're just going to use GPT-4.1. And we need to go ahead and provide a system prompt, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and just pull this. Once again, I'm pulling from the document here. So there's not a whole lot of secrets. But you're an operations agent whose role is to help IT operations manage their incidents. In order to proceed, you'll need to capture the error message from the user and ask the team what team the ticket should be assigned to. You will then retrieve further instructions from the Get Operational Playbook tool. So that's something that we're going to have to go ahead and build. And then it's like, please share your plan for addressing the issue by listing out step by step. Oftentimes that improves the accuracy of your agent, where you're saying, hey, tell me what you're going to go do. It forces it to sort of think through it, more thoroughly, and provide an estimated time to resolution and whatnot, right? So that's going to be important for us here. Always just a good practice to kind of save as you make progress. Now we're going to go ahead and create our first tool now, and this is going to go ahead and get our operational runbook. So we're going to click here on the plus sign. If we wanted to add an MCP server, we would do that here. We're not going to cover that today, but I thought I'd call that out because that was a question that came up in the MCP workshop. But we're going to add an action, and we are going to search for blob storage. And then what we're going to look for is get blob content. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why do we see sort of two of these? And the reason is because we're in Logic App Standard, and we have built-in and we have the managed version as well. And so you can use either of these in order to go ahead and access that information. And we will go ahead and use the get blob content v2 action here. And that will go ahead and allow us to retrieve that information. Now, I already have a connection, so that's why it's picked it up, just because I've done this already inside of the Logic app itself. But here we can go ahead and use existing information, and then we can go ahead and browse the playbooks and find our actual Word document itself. Now, what you've noticed here is we've got this tool thing that's shown up here. And this is particularly important for us because we need to provide a description. And this description is really important because this is what the agent will leverage in order to figure out what it needs to go ahead and do. So in our system prompt, we just said, you need to go get the operational playbook. And so we provide this description of like, this tool will retrieve the integration team's operational runbook that includes troubleshooting documentation. We also want to provide a good tool name. And this is more for, I'd say, readability than anything else. But, just the more accurate and descriptive names you can use, the better, right? So between the name and the tool description, those are really important. Now, we don't need to create any parameters for this tool. For the other tools, we will need to do that, but we're good. We're good on that front for now. Now, there's also one other action that we do need to go ahead and provide, and that is going to be parse a document. As I mentioned before, we've got that Word document. We don't want to burn up a bunch of tokens in our model by passing this large file to the model. So we're going to parse a document, and this will go ahead and basically extract just like the core text content itself, which is really what our model is interested in. It's not interested in all the other stuff. So here, what we'll go ahead and do is select the output from the previous step, which is our file content. It's also really important to know, this is an important thing to understand. We want to optimize what we send back to the model. So as a result, we don't send everything that is in the tool call execute, the tool chain here. We will only send back the last action within the tool branch back to the model. So the execution that happens here is we're going to chat. This is going to hit the trigger. The request is going to come to the agent. The agent might say, hey, how can I help you? Those types of things. Then in this part of the instructions, it knows I need to go get the operational run book. It calls this tool. It calls this action to get the blob. We then parse the document. Just the text comes back to the agent. Sometimes people ask, why is it called agent loop? And it's because it really is a loop as we're looping through these different tools in an attempt to solve a particular problem itself. So that's an important concept from that perspective. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, what if I've got like multiple actions and I want to return data from both of those actions back to the model? Well, there's kind of two ways to approach it. One, you could separate those into different tools, right, so that they're doing those more distinct things. The other option, when it makes sense, is you can go ahead and use a compose action to sort of aggregate those things. And that's what I had done in this particular use case, where with the wealth manager, where I go ahead and get account information, I go ahead and get contact information, then I use a compose where I aggregate these things together and send just the information back to the model. So that's another strategy that you can employ. And at the end of the day, you should want to do this. You don't want to send more data to your model than it needs. It's going to cost you money, and it also increases the opportunity for ambiguity, which leads to lower accuracy as well. So just some tips here as well. So we've saved our current workflow, and we can now just go ahead and click on chat. And so this is going to bring up our chat surface. Now, I've enabled the what's called easy auth, and that's why I'm being asked to go ahead and click on this link. Okay, so my token has expired. Not to so I just need to go ahead and refresh my token here. Okay, so that should take care of it. Okay, cool. And now we've got an authenticated chat session. So we can just start with our initial kind of statement of my database is offline. And so kind of what we had to do, I kind of got sidetracked there, is like I've enabled what's called easy auth, which is basically authentication inside of the Logic app. That makes all of this a secure and authenticated session. So we can see my name is showing up here. That's because it knows who I am because I've logged in. And so we've got a response so far, and we can go ahead and just say like database offline, because it's asking if there's additional information. And now what it's going to say is it's still wanting to know what is the team that should be used. And so we'll say, okay, we'll assign this to the database team. And here's probably where we're going to run into a bit of an issue, because we don't actually have a tool yet that can create that incident. But here's the plan of what the agent would like to do, right? So assign the incident to the database team, and then giving you some of those resolution steps. So that's kind of as far as we can go for now, which is fine. But let's go back to our workflow itself, and let's take a look at the run history, because this becomes particularly important for us as we want to see exactly what's taken place here. So we'll just let this load. All right, so here we've got our instance. Now, be aware, like this is showing running. This oftentimes comes up as a question. That's part of the reason I wanted to discuss this. So we can click into this, and this is going to load our session. Now, we were over here. Where was it? We were in our chat session. Now, the reason why this is still running is because we still have an active session. Like, I haven't said, okay, I'm done, close the ticket. I could actually close this web browser tab and reopen it, and this is persisted. And we would actually see this, and I could continue my conversation. So this is one of those things where sometimes people get a little concerned where it's like, hey, it's running still. Is this costing me money? And the answer is no. It's stored as part of our storage, backend storage, when we think about stateful execution. And so what's happening is it's not using up your resources, it's not burning tokens, and so you're cool. you're good, not to worry. Now, we do have some settings, some timeout settings that says, hey, after a period of inactivity, you can go ahead and complete this workflow. There's also some things that you can do where you could create a tool, and we've got a terminate action that could be used to also close down that workflow as well. There's some kind of side effects of doing that, but I do have a video on my YouTube channel. But not to worry, like, although it feels wrong because we're so used to like deterministic execution where there's a known start and a known end. With these solutions, it's not defined, right? It's not predefined in most cases. So don't worry too much about that. But here we're in the run history. And what's interesting is we've got this agent log, and this is going to go step by step exactly what took place as a replay, right? We initially made my database is offline. We then were just interacting with agent loop and the model. And then we can see, oh, hey, there was a tool call that took place. And then we went ahead and we can click on this, and it'll take us to that particular step where we can see the operational runbook was retrieved and we parsed the document. And then basically it went back to the agent itself, and then we started to communicate with our end user. We also have this like task timeline over here where we can see these steps in the form of tasks. And that's another sort of way to view it. It kind of gets you to the same point. But bottom line here is we can see everything kind of step by step. So that becomes, I think, pretty important, pretty critical for us as well. So that's kind of our initial step when we're going and building out our solution. So the next step that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and create a ServiceNow incident tool, right? So we're going to go ahead and create one of these. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. Now, the create, the update, and the close are all very similar. So I will just do the create one, and then I'll show you the update and the close, just because I don't think it's the greatest use of time to kind of do a lot of that duplicative work. So we're going to go in, and this is where we're going to use a deterministic stateful workflow. So we will go ahead and we will create that workflow. So once again, we'll go to workflow tabs, we'll click create, and then here we will select our stateful, and we'll provide a name. Now I'll just call this workshop. Just in case you're wondering, we also offer a mode called stateless. This could very much be stateless as well. The challenge with that is you don't actually see it in the run history, because these are ideal for like low latency requests. And so we don't do as much checkpointing and storage. So you can use that, but it's just not great for this use case. But in case people are wondering, that's another kind of unique value prop for Logic Apps, is that you can really reduce some of the latency because you're trading sort of the durability and all of the round trips to storage for running just inside of memory. Okay, so we've got our workflow here, and we're going to start with an HTTP trigger. So we'll just go type in request. And then let's see here. Now, the other thing that's important, we should always go ahead and it's just a good practice to add a description. Now, we're not calling this directly from like we have a kind of this layer where we have a tool description first, but just a good practice to describe what this workflow does. So just a good practice, I think. Then here we're going to go ahead and have a schema, right? So we're going to accept an assignment group, a description, failure date, time, etc. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add an action. And then here, that action is going to be ServiceNow related. So we'll go ahead and search for that. And here we're going to list records. Now, once again, I've already created a connection, so that's why we're not getting prompted for that. And in this case, we want to search for a group. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because you're going to see here, there's two groups. And we really want hold on just a sec. And in the instructions, it says select the first group, but this is not deterministic, which is kind of interesting. So this works for us, right? We could see the path here that it's going to do sys_user_group. So that's what we want. This is going to look up the assignment group. So that's what we want is that one. So I did roll the dice there, and I was correct. So in this case, it was the first one for me, but it does get a little bit odd here. Now we want to then select an advanced parameter. So we want to select, it's basically we're going to provide a query where we want to go ahead and look where name, which is a field inside of ServiceNow, is equal to our input of assignment group. So this is just going to go ahead and query for us. So that's cool. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to add an action, which is going to once again be ServiceNow, and we're going to create an incident. And so why we're doing this is that as part of that request, or when we're conversing with the solution, it asks, oh, what is the assignment group you want to go ahead and assign this to? And so that's what we need to do is when we say database, that list records is going to show up and it's going to go query, and it needs to find a reference ID for that database group. We then need to include that database group, that ID, when we go ahead and we create this particular record. So here we're going to select advanced parameters. And there's a few that we need to go after. So we do want short description, which is, I can just type. So we want short description. Then we want assignment group, right? So we want that one. We want the description. And then we also want to find severity. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. Now, this is where it always gets a little bit tricky with arrays or lists, right? So this, even though we're expecting one record back, the shape of this output is going to be in a list, which means basically we've got indexes. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to like create a loop around here where it's looping around this and all that. So we're going to take advantage of some expressions here. Now, for the short description, we're good because we'll start there. We'll go the easy path, right? So we're just saying the following error should be investigated. And then we can just grab this from the description itself, coming from our trigger body. The assignment group gets a little bit interesting, right? We're here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use an expression. So we're going to use the response from our list records action, and we're going to look for the result. And because it's an array, we're going to look for the first instance of it, and then we're going to grab the system ID for it. So that is what we're going to do. And we've got all of these sort of expressions in the document that allow you to copy paste, which which naturally is probably a good thing here. So then what we want to do is go ahead and populate our description. Once again, we'll start with just the information coming from our trigger itself. And then we're going to add some additional information as well. So we will say additional info, and we will grab the failure date time. And then what we will do is we'll include the resolution steps. And that also is going to come from our trigger. Okay. And then we have, last but not least, we have severity, and that's also going to come from our trigger as well. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We should be in good shape there. And now we need to go ahead and provide a response. So we'll just go ahead and type response. And here we will say the status code is 200. That's great. And then our body will be just ticket number, and then the value, the output that comes from this create record. So if we go ahead and click into this, we will see that the create record outputs something called number, which is basically our ticket number. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do there. And yeah, so then looks good. We should now be able to save this. Now, generally what I would highly recommend when you're doing this is go ahead and test this. So you can go ahead and click on run with payload, take what you would expect to pass into this, run this before you wire it up to your agent. You're naturally bound to make a few mistakes, whatnot, but testing it in isolation, I think, is useful before you plug it into the agent, where you're kind of going through the whole process itself. So we will go back to our agent workflow, and we'll wire up this particular create tool, and then we'll go ahead and we'll take a short break. So just to give people a heads up about that. And so now we are on chapter 9, right, where we want to go ahead and add the ServiceNow create incident tool to your agent. And so we'll be following these particular instructions in module 9. Okay, this is a little bit slow here this morning. Okay. So in order to add a new tool, we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on the plus sign. We'll add an action. Now, in this case, we can go ahead and search for call workflow. So call workflow in this Logic app. And then we have that similar experience where well, it doesn't really matter where you start. You need to kind of complete both sides of this. But we will go ahead and select our workflow that we had just created. There we go. So we'll select that workshop one. Then we'll go ahead and rename our tool. So we're going to call this Create ServiceNow Incident. We will provide a description of it. So we'll just say this. And then this is where we're going to use those agent parameters. Now, kind of the shortcut to do this is go back into the sort of the action itself. And because we use that request schema, these are automatically available to us. So go ahead and select all of those. And then what you can do is click into each of them. You'll see we got this little AI icon here. And I think this kind of streamlines everything for you. Get rid of the body. That's not overly useful for us. And then what we can also do is we do have some better descriptions. These descriptions are super important. So this is what's going to describe to our agent, to our model, kind of what is the purpose. And so this is considered context, which I think is super important. If there's a place to spend your time to really think through your design, it's really around these descriptions, because this will have a direct impact on your accuracy from that perspective. Now, this failure daytime, this one's kind of interesting, right? So we don't always have to use an agent parameter, right? In this case, what we're just going to go ahead and do is we're going to use just a UTC now function, right? So these, and if we had other deterministic steps up here that happened before the agent loop, we can go ahead and include them here as well. But the idea is these are almost like placeholders, because if you think about, say, cloud flows or traditional Logic App workflows, you can usually only see values that have actually run before, right? Because there's a dependency chain. Well, here's the thing. These are kind of placeholders because the model at runtime is going to dynamically resolve these things. And so that's why there's kind of a specific new class of parameters called agent parameters, because that will be determined really at runtime. But we can use deterministic action outputs if they're available to us as well. So let's go back. We need to do resolution steps here. So let's click on that. And we will get rid of that. And we will provide that description. And then we've got severity. Now, severity is going to be an integer, because that's what ServiceNow is interested in. Let's get rid of this. And we will go with the description, severity of the incident. So we'll go ahead and hit create. And now we've got this all pre-configured. Another good practice, I would say, is just renaming this. I would just say this would be like, this won't have any sort of impact on sort of dynamic execution, but it's more about just good hygiene, and just say call create incident workflow, especially since we'll have 3 of these in our solution itself. So now we can go ahead and hit save. Now we can go back and chat. Now this is where I did talk about that previous session that's still running. Now in this case, we wouldn't want to build from here. We are kind of working on a feature that allow you to do it, but this is going to use an old version of that workflow, right? So it's not going to have our new tool as part of this solution. So in this case, we should go ahead and create a new chat, and then this will use the latest version of our workflow. And so here we're just going to provide this error, or so this message, my database appears to be offline. And then we need to know what assignment group. So we will say that this is database. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do now. So here what's going to happen is that knowledge is going to be looked up. It's going to interpret what is this particular error message. And it's then going to go ahead and say, okay, this is probably high priority. This is a Sev1 because it's down. And these are the steps that you should go ahead and sort of take a look at for the person that's like logging the ticket itself. And then we are going to call it a Sev1 and then give an estimated time of resolution to 1 hour, because that's what's in our knowledge base itself. Now, we've got the ticket here, so it ends in 250. If we head over to ServiceNow, we'll just hit refresh. We should see that we have, oh, come on. a ticket that ends in 250 that includes our information that we just went ahead and populated, right? So here we've got our severity, we've got our descriptions, and we've got our assignment group as well, and then our short description. So this is kind of, we're off to a good start from that perspective. So that concludes module number 9. And so what we'll do now is we will take a break. We'll take a 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 35 after the hour. And then we'll pick it up and we will go ahead and we'll add the updates and we'll add the close. I won't go ahead and sort of rebuild those individually, but we'll just go ahead and add the existing ones. And then we'll go ahead and do the first challenge activity and then go ahead and run this end to end. So we'll be back in 10 minutes and we'll see you soon.
The Microsoft ecosystem is evolving faster than ever. Copilot, Power Platform, security, modern work, Azure AI, new features every week, new opportunities every day. But learning is scattered. Events are expensive, limited, and difficult to access. That changes now. Welcome to M365Con, the world's largest online Microsoft 365 convention. 2 powerful weeks, 1 week of workshops, 1 week of free global talks and keynotes. Build your own learning path with expert-led workshops. From Power Platform to security, from Copilot to Azure AI, you choose what matters to you. Then join over 60 free sessions with most valuable professionals, Microsoft trainers, architects, and innovators from around the world. Meet the community, explore the virtual expo, connect with experts, and be part of a global Microsoft experience. Accessible, global, interactive, and designed for every Microsoft 365 professional. M365Con, your community, your learning path, your Microsoft 365 future. Welcome to PowerBros Knowledge, where Power Platform meets pure innovation. Your business runs on chaos, approvals lost, data scattered, time wasted. We know that pain. Now imagine automating everything, faster, smarter, and built for impact. That's where PowerBros come in, architects of digital change. We don't talk trends, we build results. Our Knowledge Hub turns expertise into action. Real tutorials, real automation, real impact. Whether it's Power Apps, Automate, Logic Apps, or Entra, we make it work together, smarter. Join the PowerBros movement. 30,000 professionals learning, building, and sharing every day. Ready to transform your workflows? Book us now, and let's build something legendary together.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I train people to become Power Platform Solutions Architects. If you're watching this, you know Power Platform, but be honest, when you're building a solution, are you using the best tools to solve the problem or just the tools you know? If you love building powerful, scalable solutions that make your company money, let me share why our training is different. We've noticed that the best architects know a series of best practices and they apply them to every project. So we took all these best practices and put them into this course.
The Microsoft ecosystem is evolving faster than ever. Copilot, Power Platform, security, modern work, Azure AI, new features every week, new opportunities every day. But learning is scattered. Events are expensive, limited, and difficult to access. That changes now. Welcome to M365Con, the world's largest online Microsoft 365 convention. 2 powerful weeks. 1 week of workshops, 1 week of free global talks and keynotes. Build your own learning path with expert-led workshops. From Power Platform to security, from Copilot to Azure AI, you choose what matters to you. Then join over 60 free sessions with most valuable professionals, Microsoft trainers, architects, and innovators from around the world. Meet the community, explore the virtual expo, connect with experts, and be part of a global Microsoft experience. Accessible, global, interactive, and designed for every Microsoft 365 professional. M365Con, your community, your learning path, your Microsoft 365 future.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I train people to become Power Platform Solutions Architects. If you're watching this, you know Power Platform, but be honest, when you're building a solution, are you using the best tools to solve the problem or just the tools you know? If you love building powerful, scalable solutions that make your company money, let me share why our training is different. We've noticed that the best architects know a series of best practices and they apply them to every project. So we took all these best practices and put them into this course.
The Microsoft ecosystem is evolving faster than ever. Copilot, Power Platform, security, modern work, Azure AI, new features every week, new opportunities every day. But learning is scattered. Events are expensive, limited, and difficult to access. That changes now. Welcome to M365Con, the world's largest online Microsoft 365 convention. 2 powerful weeks, 1 week of workshops, 1 week of free global talks and keynotes. Build your own learning path with expert-led workshops. From Power Platform to security, from Copilot to Azure AI, you choose what matters to you. Then join over 60 free sessions with most valuable professionals, Microsoft trainers, architects, and innovators from around the world. Meet the community, explore the virtual expo, connect with experts, and be part of a global Microsoft experience. Accessible, global, interactive, and designed for every Microsoft 365 professional. M365Con, your community, your learning path, your Microsoft 365 future.
All right, so we're back, and let's keep moving here. So in Lab 10, we're going to go ahead and create our update incident tool, right? So we're going to follow a very similar process to what we just had done. We also do provide the ability to just go ahead and copy the workflow as well, so that you can just kind of streamline that instead of doing a lot of clicks. But let's just take a quick look just so you have a sense of what's going on here. So we've got an HTTP request. In this case, we just have two inputs, a ticket number and notes. Same idea, we want to update the ticket and we want to include the, well, in order to update the ticket, we need to go ahead and reference the incident itself. And there's a specific system ID that we need to go ahead and retrieve. So we query based on the ticket number that's going to return like a sysID that we can then subsequently pass into the update record, which is also going to be of incident type. And we'll include the work notes. So any of the work that the technician or the operations analyst has provided or performed, we're going to include that information here as well. So that's going to be this workflow. Then we'll just return a response just saying, hey, it's been updated successfully. So we're back now in kind of our core agentic workflow. And we want to now add another tool, right? And so now we're heading over to chapter 11 or module 11, where we're going to provide a similar process to what we did for the create tool. And we'll go ahead and add that tool. So once again, we're going to go ahead and search for call workflow. And so we'll do that. And then here we're going to go ahead and use the update incident. Once again, because we had that request schema, these are automatically being populated for us, which is good. And we want to, once again, create the those agent parameters. We also want to rename the tool. So that's important. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll also go ahead and update the description because that's important, as we've talked about before. And then now we'll go ahead and create these agent parameters. So once again, we can click on the little AI icon and we can just do a little update here. So this is going to be the ServiceNow ticket number. So we'll do that. It'll be a string. And then we'll also go ahead and do similar for notes. We'll get rid of the body here and we'll update the description. So that's cool. And ticket number. Okay, so then we need to, okay, so that's, yeah, so that is good. We should also just, we will update this as well. We'll just call this call update incident workflow. All right. Now is a good time to save. Oh, we've got an issue. The access token. Okay, so that's unfortunate. Looks like my token has expired. Oh, that's not good. Okay, so unfortunately, we might have to redo those steps. Another reason to save frequently. Okay, so let's go through this again. Call workflow. So we'll do that. Oops. This will be okay, and this is update. All right. Now, if we head back to our chat, so we're incrementally building this, right? So we'll go back to our chat and we should see an update. So we'll see a create, and then we'll also see an update as well. So we're kind of progressively building this solution here and testing it. Okay, so database team. Okay, so we don't want to do that just yet. So we want to say database is offline, assigned to database, right? So sometimes you'll see the prompts coming back to being a little bit different because, like, once again, this is non-deterministic, but we're trying to achieve an objective. So that's why we see a little bit of difference. And then here, so it's logged a ticket. So, 11251, assign it to the database group. So you can imagine now, someone goes away and does some work and comes back and says, database team has provided an update. The database has been rebooted. The functionality should be restored in 15 minutes. So if we provide this, our agent should figure out, like, hey, wait a minute, this is an update. I've got a tool that can be used to go ahead and update a particular ticket. And so that's what's happened here, is it's gone ahead and done that. So if we head over to that ServiceNow ticket, we should see that's the case. The other thing to notice I haven't had to restate my ticket number, right? Like, it knows that in this particular run, in this particular context, that is the current or active ticket that we're dealing with. So let's just head back to ServiceNow and we go to 251. And what we should see is, yes, we've got some additional activities, right? So we have the initial create, and we can see some timestamps. And then we can see that we have an update now. And we've got work notes that were actually added to the case. And that's here. And that was basically our update. And so we can see the whole audit trail. Much like our original instruction that says, hey, our corporate policies, you create, then you update, then you close. We've done just that and followed the policy, but did it in agentic manner. Now, the next use case is we want to be able to close the incident. So this is going to look, once again, kind of similar to what we did before. We've got a ticket number that comes in. We've got notes. These are going to be the resolution notes or the close notes. Once again, we want to go ahead and get the reference, the SysID for the ticket number, and then we're going to go ahead and update. Now, what's a little bit different here is our state is being changed. On the update side, we had a different state. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. It's state 2, meaning that this was in progress. We have this other state, 7, that represents closed. Now, when it's closed, we also have the opportunity to provide a resolution code. In this case, we're choosing solution provided. And then we also provide resolution notes, which is a little bit different than the work notes. Hence, that's why this one is its own workflow itself. Now, maybe you could overload this and sort of account for this, but that's why we've got a separate workflow for this. So let's head back and we can close these out and we will add another tool. And so this is going to be, we're now on basically chapter 13, if you're kind of following along here. So we will go ahead, once again, we will call a workflow. In this Logic app. And this is another kind of difference between Logic App Standard and Power Automate, in the sense that we have this notion of an app construct where you have one Logic app, but you can have many workflows. And so that's what allows us to go ahead and select from this Logic app, because it's in the same sort of app context. And when you go ahead and deploy these things, you deploy as a single unit. You would deploy all of these as a single application itself. Now here we're going to close the incident. We'll choose that. We'll just also update this, close. And then once again, we want to update our tool name. So close ServiceNow incident. And we will go ahead and update the description. And then we will select our two inputs once again. And we will go ahead and just update these. Okay, and then we also need to do the same thing for resolution notes. So here we will update this, and we will add a different description. So that looks good. All right, so once again, we should be in a position to go save this and run this now. So we'll go ahead and create a new session. Then once again, we will indicate our database appears to be offline. So this will create a new ticket because we're in a new session. It'll also use the latest version of the workflow itself. So we'll just say database is offline, assign to database. And then we'll go through the update process, and then we'll go through the close process as well here. All right, so we've got a new ticket created, so 252. So we'll now do that. Okay, so it's saying it's been updated with the latest information. Now we will say, please close the issue. The access to the database has been restored and tested. So this should now go ahead and call our close event, right? So it's been restored and verified, came back, and it's now been closed. So this ends in 252. So let's head back, and we will refresh here. Oh, okay, I know why there's a filter on. That's why it's not showing up. There's a filter saying active equals true. So that's not the case because it's now closed. All right, so here we can see it's closed. We've got our resolution notes. We've got our resolution code, right? So that's all good. And then here we can see basically our stack trace, right? We created the ticket, we updated the ticket, and we closed the ticket, right? All conforming to our business process for IT service management. All right, so that is kind of the core of the sort of the workshop content here. But we have a challenge. So this is to let you go ahead and sort of build on what you've just learned, and we're kind of giving you some latitude to go achieve that. So we'll just do this first challenge, and then that'll be it for the solution itself. So we want to add a new tool for email notification. So we will basically, I'm going to call it stakeholders, but we want to add a tool that will allow to inform stakeholders for when this particular issue is closed. And this was also in our document. We had this in our document, send a summary of the issue and status by email to stakeholders, right? So we will go ahead and we will update our workflow here. And we will click add an action. In this case, we're going to do email. So we'll go Office 365. And let's see here. We want, Outlook, and we will send an email. Now here, we'll call this tool send email to stakeholders. And then we'll just say this tool will send stakeholder information. Now, here we've got like some options. I think in this case, I'm just going to hard code my email address so that, for simplicity here, but we could pull this from ServiceNow or whatever. We could do some sort of lookup. We also can go ahead and provide a subject. Now here, I'm just going to let the agent, the LLM, go ahead and figure this out. And then same thing here, like we'll say email body. And then here we can just say a summary of the IT incident. So we'll also go ahead and do that. And then here, sensitivity is normal, etc. Now, what's interesting about this, so we'll just go ahead and hit save here. Now, we've introduced a feature called on behalf of, or create per user connection. So if we click connection and we click add, right, this is an option. So when this is selected or checked on, what will happen is that that particular action will run under the security context of the logged in user in the chat session. So what this means is when I run this, it'll get sent from my connection. Now you might be saying, hey, but Kent, you were also the developer here. But imagine I give this to a colleague, or a colleague logs into this agent, and they actually run and they get to this point where the stakeholders needs to receive an email. They will get prompted and for consent, and they will actually create a connection at just in time that will send from their email box, as opposed to my email box or like the developer who built the solution itself. So that becomes pretty important, becomes pretty powerful. So the agent really almost becomes personalizable or customizable for the end user that's actually using it. All right, so we'll just go through this one more time, and this will, and then we won't have to log any more tickets here. So let's just go ahead and, so we'll just enter that. Okay, oops. So once again, this will go ahead and create an incident. So the database. So now this should be updated. We should get an updated. Or sorry, this should be just created. Yeah. So we should now get a ticket. Okay, so 253. Now we'll go ahead and say database team is looking into it. Right, so this will be the update. Okay, so it's been updated. And then we should also ask to close. All right, so that's now been closed. Now we can also say, please send summary to stakeholders. And that should now go ahead and send that. Now we probably could tweak our system instructions to also include like, hey, whenever you close a ticket, send a summary to stakeholders as well. Like that is an option. We could tune it as well. And then so I've just looked at my email here, and sure enough, like, incident regarding blah, blah, blah has been resolved, summary of actions taken, and, basically a summary, exactly what we would want. And obviously we can control formatting and sort of make that look prettier and say, use better styling and stuff like that. And that's all quite possible. So yeah, that is concludes the content, the lab itself. I've got a few more slides here, and then we'll start to wrap up. One question that does come up. Okay, great. You've got that, chat experience that you can go ahead and use from a Logic App perspective, but I wouldn't want to go ahead and use that in production, and that's fair. And so there's a couple options. We do offer the ability for that chat widget to be hosted like in a custom web experience as well, right? So it's an iframe. We can offer that as an iframe for people to do that if you want to host it on, say, a website. Then the other option is Microsoft Teams. So this is currently in preview. We announced this at Ignite, but here is a screenshot from an agent being called from inside of Microsoft Teams. And so this now sort of participates in that ecosystem as well. You also see that we've got some additional rich formatting where we can go ahead and, instead of just text being displayed, we can display images. There's also other rich formatting, like you can see bold, and we can do icons and, all of those things as well. So there is, more than just what you see in that Getting Started lab itself. All right, so that concludes, I think, a lot of the content on my side. Just will sort of leave you with some additional information. So I've got another session next Friday, and this is going to be building agentic business processes in Microsoft Foundry. And so there I'll show you some new things that you didn't see here today, where kind of we'll show you the Foundry workflow side of things and just some other options in terms of building out those solutions. So do go ahead and check that out. Have some new information for you in that particular session itself. And then also just leaving you with some additional content links as well. So YouTube channel, I try to post on there quite frequently, and you'll see that. And then also on my blog, I've got some additional resources there as well. Marcel, were you joining?
Thank you for the workshop, but I have 3 questions. I will start with the first one. What guardrails do you implement to prevent risky actions? So I think this is an important point. If you work with more than
Yep.
one systems, like here, Salesforce, for example, or ServiceNow.
Yeah, and so I think there's kind of two sort of two solutions. I think there's kind of the short term and what we're working on longer term. So how this, I think, is why it's important to sort of ground your agent with knowledge, where you can, importantly, you can go ahead and describe what you want your agent to do. But I think it's just as important to describe what you don't want your agent to do as well. And so I think in the short term, grounding your agent in knowledge, I think, is a good start. Now, that's bound to sort of create some gaps, right? There's some things you're not going to think of, or you want to sort of manage these things more holistically. And that's where we are working on guardrail features. And I would expect us to sort of leverage a lot of what you see in Foundry from a guardrails perspective, so that you can sort of manage these at the sort of enterprise level. And obviously they've got some rich capabilities on the guardrail side. So that's why we're looking to leverage what they've built, because, obviously they've been putting a lot of effort and thought into that as well.
No, sounds good. And regarding to monitoring, so yeah, is it the same monitoring like as I monitor in standard Logic apps, or should I? Is it a different? I would say error handling, or so how is the way of work when?
Yeah, and so this is where this came up like in the last workshop too, in the questions on LinkedIn, which was great. But that's where like we really feel it's an advantage to what we've done here with Logic Apps, because especially for existing Logic App customers, like we're not introducing a whole bunch of new paradigms from that perspective, right? Where it's like, oh, how do I deploy this? How do I manage this? How do I do like error handling and troubleshooting and things like that? And the answer is that it is still Logic App standard itself. So we have the existing facilities that take place where we've got application insights, we've got Azure Monitor integration. We also have like some third-party partners that have solutions as well. And at the end of the day, these are just Logic Apps, and they are workflows. And obviously there's some new things that get introduced, like tokens and stuff like that, but it all still shows up in our telemetry. And that's where, when I showed earlier how we sort of backfill those traces to Foundry, it's sort of the same idea. Like we're funneling into their ecosystem as well. So whether you're trying to monitor from Foundry or you're trying to like monitor from a Logic App perspective, like these are existing pathways that we're using, and it doesn't introduce sort of new paradigms for people to have to think about.
Is it possible to use it with Azure Monitor too?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's still there's those metrics and events that show up in Azure Monitor. So when you go ahead and create a sort of alert rule inside of Azure Monitor, and you're thinking about, hey, workflows failing and stuff like that, those are all still in play and work exactly the same.
No, really interesting. Regarding so for example, I work a lot with Graph API, and so regarding to the error handling, it's nearly the known HTTP errors what you can get 200 404 and so on. Is it regarding to the error handling regarding to API failures, permission issues, and so on? Is it this is the same like an error handling in Graph?
Yep. Well, so it's so we have the same sort of constructs around like well, oftentimes we use scopes, right, in terms of like kind of like try catch type semantics. But then also there's the notion of like configure run after, right? So you can have specific actions that run under certain conditions, such as like the previous action failing itself. So yeah, all of those existing logic app constructs are in play. And at the end of the day, they sort of bubble up the same sort of errors that exist with workflows. And so then as a result, all of those like alert processing rules in Azure Monitor and all of those events that show up in App Insights are exactly the same.
Perfect. So, and only the last, for me, the important questions. So I have created, I would say, 99 of my logic apps with consumption. Is it possible to work with this mode in consumption in logic apps too?
Yeah, it is. So this was something that we announced and released at Ignite. So the when we think about agent loop in Logic App Standard, that's GA, that GA'd at Ignite. So that's ready for production. And then for consumption, we introduced public preview for consumption. Now the consumption one's a little different in the sense that we self-host the model for you. So you don't have as many options from a model perspective. Like with standard, it's kind of bring your own model where it's like, hey, go into OpenAI and basically Azure OpenAI and go ahead and deploy a model and sort of create your connection. When it comes to consumption, we host the model for you. So you don't have that type of control where it's like, hey, I want to use this other model. And I can't remember which one we use off the top of my head. I think right now it's GPT-4.1, and that will evolve and we'll kind of support 5 and whatnot. But that's where you'll have less options, but you still can go ahead and do it. And then what'll happen is like we do embed like the model charges as part of your consumption execution, but it is still quite cheap where you're paying per agent run versus like, hey, I've got this logic app compute that is running, all of the time. And that's, creating meters and a bill from that perspective. So consumption is definitely a great getting started where it's like, hey, I want to do some prototyping. I want to go ahead and explore this. I want to prove out the idea. And, it's still fine to run kind of as a solution. But if you're like, oh, I need some of these other advanced features like calling custom code or connecting to VNets or things like that, then it's like you can also move that to standard. So we have another feature recently, and I can't remember what we call it. It's kind of like a clone where you can take your consumption logic app and basically have it automatically move to standard without sort of any sort of extracting, updating, that sort of thing. And that would apply to the agent loop functionality too. But short answer is yes, you can go ahead and create agent loop inside of consumption.
Perfect. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for your answers, and thank you for the time, and thank you for these amazing workshops. I think this was very insightful for me too. And so in the next week we have 61 expert sessions. I think a lot, and one of these is and this would be the last one in this in the next week from you. So I'm really happy. And I will start in the next week on Monday with a keynote regarding to the Azure the AI Center of Excellence. I think this is an amazing point because it's about all these topics, about Logic Apps, about Azure Foundry, about Copilot Studio, about M365 Copilot, because Azure is everywhere. And I think it's not only regarding to Microsoft. The companies has the most companies have more than one Microsoft AI solutions. And that's why it's so important to have an and center of excellence or structure for it. That's I'm really happy that I could start with this topic next week. And for today, I would say thank you, and we see us next week.
Yep. Thanks
have a nice weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The Microsoft ecosystem is evolving faster than ever. Copilot, Power Platform, security, modern work, Azure AI, new features every week, new opportunities every day. But learning is scattered. Events are expensive, limited, and difficult to access. That changes now. Welcome to M365Con, the world's largest online Microsoft 365 convention. 2 powerful weeks, 1 week of workshops, 1 week of free global talks and keynotes. Build your own learning path with expert-led workshops. From Power Platform to security, from Copilot to Azure AI, you choose what matters to you. Then join over 60 free sessions with most valuable professionals, Microsoft trainers, architects, and innovators from around the world. Meet the community, explore the virtual expo, connect with experts, and be part of a global Microsoft experience. Accessible, global, interactive, and designed for every Microsoft 365 professional. M365Con, your community, your learning path, your Microsoft 365 future.
Azure.
Oh.